20. Pamukkale, Turkey. Pamukkale sits in southwestern Turkey and looks less like a natural landscape and more like something out of a fantasy film. The name itself means cotton castle in Turkish, and once you see it, the name makes perfect sense. Cascading white terraces made entirely of calcium carbonate stretch across a hillside, forming a series of natural pools that glow bright white against the surrounding green landscape. The terraces were formed over thousands of years as mineral-rich thermal water flowed down the hillside and cooled, depositing layers of calcium carbonate that hardened into the white formations seen today. The water that feeds these pools sits at a constant temperature of around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It has been flowing and building these formations for an estimated 14,000 years. What makes Pamukkale even more remarkable is that it has been drawing visitors for thousands of years, not just modern tourists. The ancient Greek city of Hierapolis was built directly on top of the site, and its ruins still stand today. The site is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the thermal pools remain open for visitors to walk through, making it one of the few places on Earth where you can stand inside a natural wonder that has been attracting people since ancient times. 19. Zhangjiajie National Forest Park, China. Zhangjiajie National Forest Park in China's Hunan province is home to one of the most unusual landscapes on the planet. Thousands of sandstone pillars rise straight out of the ground, some reaching over 3,000 feet into the sky. These columns are so dramatic and so otherworldly that they directly inspired the floating mountains in the 2009 film Avatar, with one pillar officially renamed the Avatar Hallelujah Mountain in 2010. The pillars were formed over hundreds of millions of years through a combination of water erosion, freezing, and the natural expansion of rock. Quartz sandstone, which is highly resistant to erosion, formed the towering columns while the surrounding softer rock wore away. The result is a forest of stone giants draped in vegetation, often disappearing into low cloud cover that makes the entire scene look suspended in mid-air. Zhangjiajie became China's first national forest park in 1982 and covers over 10,000 acres. The park is home to the Beilong Elevator, the world's tallest outdoor elevator, which carries visitors 1,070 feet up the side of a cliff face. On busy days, over 10,000 people ride it. Standing at the top and looking out across the sea of stone pillars and cloud is an experience that has no real comparison anywhere else on Earth. 18. Antelope Canyon, Arizona, USA. Antelope Canyon is a slot canyon carved into the red rock of the American Southwest, located on Navajo land near the town of Page, Arizona. From the outside, it barely looks like anything, just a narrow crack in the sandstone. But step inside, and the walls open up into sweeping, wave-like curves of deep orange and red rock that look more like a painting than a geological formation. The canyon was carved over thousands of years by flash floods forcing water and sand through narrow openings in the rock. The repeated movement of sediment-heavy water smoothed and shaped the walls into flowing curves and spirals. The canyon is split into two separate sections, Upper Antelope Canyon and Lower Antelope Canyon, each with its own distinct character and appearance. What makes Antelope Canyon truly surreal are the light beams that appear in the upper section during midday, particularly between March and October. As sunlight filters through the narrow opening at the top, it catches the dust particles in the air and forms visible shafts of light that appear almost solid. Antelope Canyon is one of the most photographed places in the American Southwest, and access is restricted to guided tours only, run exclusively by the Navajo Nation. 17. Lake Natron, Tanzania. Lake Natron in northern Tanzania is one of the most hostile environments on Earth's surface, and one of the strangest looking. The lake runs a deep red and pink color, stained by the salt-loving microorganisms that thrive in its alkaline waters. The water's pH level sits between 9 and 10.5, making it nearly as caustic as ammonia, and capable of burning the skin and eyes of animals that aren't adapted to it. The lake sits at the base of an active volcano called Oldoinho Lengai, which feeds it with sodium carbonate and other minerals. When animals make contact with the water and die, the high concentration of sodium carbonate acts as a natural preservative, calcifying their bodies and leaving them frozen in the exact position they died in. Photographer Nick Brandt documented this phenomenon in 2013, publishing images of birds and bats that had been turned to stone by the lake's chemistry. Despite its extreme conditions, Lake Natron is not lifeless. It is one of the only regular breeding grounds for the lesser flamingo, with up to 2.5 million of them nesting on the lake's salt flats each year. The flamingos have evolved tough skin on their legs to withstand the caustic water. From above, the contrast of the red and pink lake covered in a mass of flamingos is one of the most surreal natural images on the planet. 16. Fly Geyser, Nevada, USA. Fly Geyser sits in the middle of the Nevada desert and looks like it was placed there by a special effects team. It shoots water several feet into the air continuously, and its mounds are covered in vivid shades of green, red, and orange that look almost neon against the dry desert landscape. It is not widely known, and for most of its existence, it was hidden on private land and inaccessible to the public. The geyser was not created by nature alone. In 1964, an energy company drilled a well in the area looking for geothermal energy sources. The well was not capped correctly, and superheated water began pushing up through the opening. Over decades, dissolved minerals in the water built up around the opening, forming the multi-tiered mound that exists today. The vivid colors come from thermophilic algae, heat-loving microorganisms that thrive in the mineral-rich water. The land was purchased by the Burning Man Project in 2016, and limited guided tours have been available since 2018. Fly Geyser sits on a property called Fly Ranch, and access remains controlled and restricted. The water temperature at the source reaches around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and the geyser has been continuously reshaping and building its own mound ever since the well was drilled, meaning the structure looks slightly different every year. 15. Waitomo Glowworm Caves, New Zealand. In the Waikato region of New Zealand's North Island, there is a cave system where the ceiling is alive. Thousands of tiny organisms cling to the cave roof and emit a soft blue-green light, turning the darkness above into something that resembles a night sky full of stars. These are the Waitomo Glowworm Caves, and the light source is not any kind of plant or mineral. It is a species of glowworm found only in New Zealand. The organism responsible is called Arachnocampa luminosa, a fungus gnat unique to New Zealand. In its larval stage, it produces bioluminescent light from a biological process involving waste products in its body. The light is used to attract prey, tiny insects that fly toward the glow and become trapped in sticky threads. The larvae hang from the ceiling. The caves were first explored by European settlers in 1887 and have been open to the public ever since. The caves themselves were formed over roughly 30 million years as limestone dissolved and carved out chambers through the rock. Visitors travel through parts of the cave by boat in complete silence, drifting beneath the glowing ceiling. The largest chamber, known as the cathedral, is so acoustically perfect that it has hosted live concerts. With thousands of individual glowworms lighting the rock above, the Waitomo Caves are unlike anything else found on Earth. 14. Cappadocia, Turkey. Cappadocia in central Turkey is a landscape that looks like it was designed by someone who had never seen a normal geological formation. The region is covered in tall, tapered rock columns known as fairy chimneys, hundreds of them clustered across the valleys in shades of white, gray, and terracotta. Some rise over 130 feet tall. Many have been carved out and used as homes, churches, and storage rooms for thousands of years. The fairy chimneys were formed by millions of years of volcanic activity followed by erosion. Volcanic eruptions from nearby Mount Erciyes and Mount Hassan deposited thick layers of ash and lava across the region. Over time, wind and water eroded the softer volcanic rock, leaving the harder caps of basalt balanced on top of softer columns below, creating the mushroom-shaped formations seen today. The region was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985. Beneath the surface, the story gets stranger. Cappadocia is home to over 200 underground cities carved directly into the soft volcanic rock, some descending up to 18 stories deep. The largest, Derinkuyu, could shelter up to 20,000 people and included stables, wineries, churches, and ventilation shafts. These cities were used as far back as the 8th century BC. Above ground, the landscape has become famous for its hot air balloon flights, which lift passengers above the ferry chimneys at sunrise, an image that has made Cappadocia one of the most photographed places in the world. 13. Salar de Uyuni, Bolivia. Salar de Uyuni in southwestern Bolivia is the largest salt flat on Earth, covering over 4,000 square miles at an elevation of nearly 12,000 feet above sea level. During the dry season, the surface is a blinding white crust of salt that stretches to the horizon in every direction, with no visible endpoint. It is so flat and so vast that it has been used to calibrate the altimeters of satellites orbiting the Earth. The salt flat was formed from a prehistoric lake that dried up over tens of thousands of years, leaving behind a crust of salt that in some places is over 30 feet deep. Beneath the surface lies one of the world's largest lithium reserves, estimated to hold around 50 to 70% of the world's total supply. But it is the rainy season that transforms Salar de Uyuni into its most surreal state. Between December and April, a thin layer of rainwater covers the salt and creates a near-perfect mirror effect, reflecting the sky so completely that the horizon disappears entirely. The effect is so accurate that standing on the surface during the wet season makes it nearly impossible to tell where the ground ends and the sky begins. Hotels built entirely from blocks of salt sit on the edge of the flats. The area is also home to flamingo colonies, geysers, and multicolored lagoons within a few hours' drive. Salar de Uyuni is not just the most surreal place in South America. It is one of the most visually disorienting places on the entire planet. 12. Grand Prismatic Spring, Yellowstone, USA. The Grand Prismatic Spring in Yellowstone National Park is the largest hot spring in the United States and the third largest in the world. It measures roughly 370 feet across and reaches a depth of over 160 feet, deeper than a 10-story building. But its size is not what makes it surreal. It is the color. The spring is ringed with vivid bands of yellow, orange, red, and green that radiate outward from a deep blue center, making it look less like a natural feature and more like something painted onto the ground. The colors are produced by different species of heat-loving microorganisms called thermophiles that live in the mineral-rich water. Each band of color corresponds to a different community of bacteria thriving at a specific temperature. The center of the spring is too hot for most life, sitting at around 189 degrees Fahrenheit, and appears a deep blue. As the water cools toward the edges, different microbial communities take hold, producing the striking rings of color. The spring discharges roughly 560 gallons of water per minute and produces a constant cloud of steam that rises above it throughout the year. The steam can make it difficult to see the full color display from ground level, which is why the park's elevated boardwalk and a nearby overlook trail offer the best views. From above, the Grand Prismatic Spring is one of the most striking natural images in the world, a perfect ring of fire colors surrounding a deep blue eye in the middle of the Wyoming wilderness. 11. Socotra Island, Yemen. Socotra Island sits in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Yemen and looks like it belongs on another planet. The island has been isolated from the rest of the world for so long, an estimated 6 to 7 million years, that nearly a third of its plant species exist nowhere else on Earth. The most iconic of these is the dragon blood tree, a species with a wide, flat canopy that looks like an inside-out umbrella balanced on a pale trunk. These trees cover entire plateaus across the island and create a landscape unlike anything found anywhere else. The dragon blood tree gets its name from the deep red resin it produces when its bark is cut. The resin has been used for centuries in dyes, medicines, and violin varnish, and was highly valued during the Roman era. Individual trees can live for up to 600 years. The island's long geographic isolation allowed hundreds of species to evolve independently from the rest of the world, including unique species of birds, reptiles, and plants that have no relatives anywhere else on the planet. Socotra was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2008. The island also features limestone caves, rugged mountain ranges, and white sand beaches with turquoise water. Despite its remote location and the ongoing conflict in Yemen, it has attracted researchers and adventurous travelers for its extraordinary biodiversity. Walking through a forest of dragon blood trees on Socotra is one of the most genuinely alien experiences available anywhere on Earth. 10. Danakil Depression, Ethiopia. The Danakil Depression in northern Ethiopia is one of the most extreme environments on the surface of the planet. It sits over 400 feet below sea level and regularly records temperatures above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, making it one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth. The landscape is defined by active lava lakes, acid pools that glow neon yellow and green, vast salt flats, and hydrothermal vents that deposit mineral formations in shades of color that have no business existing in nature. The depression sits at the junction of three tectonic plates that are slowly pulling apart from one another, a process known as continental rifting. This geological activity is responsible for the volcanic features that define the region. The Erda Ale volcano, located within the depression, contains one of the world's few permanent lava lakes, which has been active for over a century. The area around Dalal, a former mining settlement within the depression, contains acid pools and salt formations that register some of the most acidic natural water ever recorded, with pH levels close to zero. Despite its extreme conditions, the Danakil Depression has been inhabited for centuries by the Afar people, a nomadic group who harvest salt from the flats and transport it by camel caravan across the desert. Scientists also study the region closely because its extreme chemistry closely mimics conditions believed to exist on other planets, making it a live testing ground for astrobiology. Tours to the Danakil Depression do operate, though they are considered among the most physically demanding and logistically challenging on Earth. 9. Nika Crystal Cave, Mexico. Deep beneath the Chihuahuan Desert in northern Mexico, inside the Nika mine, lies a cave that looks like it was built for a science fiction film. The Cave of Crystals, discovered by miners in the year 2000, contains some of the largest natural crystals ever found on Earth. Beams of translucent white selenite crystal rise from the cave floor and ceiling, some measuring over 36 feet long and weighing up to 55 tons. They are larger than telephone poles and predate the dinosaurs in their formation. The crystals grew over a period of roughly 500,000 years, forming in superheated water saturated with calcium sulfate that filled the cave before the mine's pumps drained it. The cave sits nearly 1,000 feet below the surface, and without the pumps running, it would flood again. The temperature inside reaches 136 degrees Fahrenheit with nearly 100% humidity, conditions so extreme that unprotected humans can survive for only around 10 minutes before heat stroke becomes life-threatening. Researchers who have studied the cave required specially designed ice-cooled suits. In 2017, scientists made an additional discovery that deepened the cave's mystery. Studying fluid pockets trapped inside the crystals, they found evidence of microbial life, organisms that had been dormant inside the crystals for an estimated 10,000 to 50,000 years. When rehydrated in a laboratory setting, some of these ancient microbes were revived. The cave has since been sealed off from public access to protect both the crystals and researchers, making it one of the most extraordinary places on Earth that almost no one will ever see in person. 8. Lake Hillier, Australia. On the edge of Middle Island off the southern coast of Western Australia, there is a lake that is pink. Not faintly pink, not occasionally pink, permanently, vividly, bubblegum pink, year-round, regardless of the light or the season. Lake Hillier holds its color whether viewed from the air, from the shoreline, or in a glass. The water retains its pink hue even when removed from the lake. It sits separated from the deep blue of the Southern Ocean by nothing more than a narrow strip of sand and trees, making the color contrast from above one of the most striking natural images in the Southern Hemisphere. The pink color was long debated by scientists, but research now points to a combination of factors: a specific species of salt-loving algae called Dunaliella salina, halobacterium microorganisms, and the lake's extremely high salinity. The interaction between these biological elements and the salt chemistry produces carotenoid pigments that tint the water pink. The lake's salt content is comparable to that of the Dead Sea. Despite its unusual chemistry, the water is not considered harmful to humans, and people have swum in it without ill effects. Lake Hillier was first recorded by English navigator Matthew Flinders in 1802, who noted the extraordinary color in his journal. Middle Island is part of a nature reserve and is not permanently inhabited. Access is limited and typically available only by scenic flight or private boat, which is part of what has kept the lake in near pristine condition for over 2 centuries. From a plane, the sight of a perfectly pink lake, bordered by green forest and deep blue ocean, is something that defies easy explanation. 7. The Wave, Arizona, USA. The Wave is a sandstone rock formation located in the Coyote Buttes area of the Paria Canyon Vermilion Cliffs Wilderness on the Arizona-Utah border. It consists of intersecting troughs and ridges of Navajo sandstone that have been carved by wind and water over millions of years into flowing, wave-like shapes. The surface is layered in bands of red, orange, pink, and white that follow the curves of the rock, creating the impression that the stone itself is in motion. The formation dates back approximately 190 million years to the Jurassic period, when the region was covered by a vast desert of shifting sand dunes. Over time, the dunes were compressed and cemented into rock, preserving the original layering of the sand. Subsequent erosion then sculpted the surface into the curves visible today. The patterns in the rock are so consistent and so smooth that the site is considered one of the finest examples of cross-bedded sandstone in the world. Access to the Wave is tightly controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. Only 64 permits are issued per day, 48 through an online lottery conducted months in advance, and 16 through a daily in-person lottery at a local visitor center. The trail to reach it is unmarked, roughly 6 miles round trip across open desert terrain, and there is no shade or water along the route. The combination of extreme permit restrictions and physical access demands means that the Wave remains one of the least crowded and most pristine natural formations in the United States. 6. Marble Caves, Chile. In the middle of General Carrera Lake, one of the deepest lakes in South America, straddling the border of Chile and Argentina, there is an island made almost entirely of marble. Over thousands of years, the lake's turquoise glacial water has carved directly into the marble rock, creating a series of caves, tunnels, and pillars with walls so smooth they look polished. The water's color reflects off the marble interior, bathing the caves in shifting shades of blue and green that change with the season and the time of day. General Carrera Lake is fed by glacial meltwater from the surrounding Andes, giving it an intense turquoise color caused by fine glacial sediment suspended in the water. The marble formations that make up the caves, locally known as the Cuevas de Marmal, were shaped by roughly 6,000 years of wave erosion. The rock itself is approximately 500 million years old. The swirling patterns of white, gray, and blue marble on the cave walls, combined with the reflected turquoise light from the water below, produce an interior that changes appearance throughout the day as the light angle shifts. The caves are accessible only by boat from the small town of Puerto Rio Tranquilo on the Chilean side of the lake, and conditions on the water can change quickly. The region is remote, with limited infrastructure, and the journey to reach the caves is part of what makes the experience so distinct. In winter, the water level rises and reduces access to the cave interiors. In summer, the glacial melt intensifies the water's turquoise color, making the caves at their most vivid. There is no other cave system on Earth quite like them. 5. Giant's Causeway, Northern Ireland. On the northeastern coast of Northern Ireland, roughly 60,000 interlocking basalt columns rise from the sea and extend along the coastline like the remnants of an ancient structure. The columns are almost perfectly hexagonal, fitting together with a geometric precision that looks too deliberate to be natural. They range in height from a few inches to nearly 40 feet, and their flat tops form a stepping stone path that runs from the cliff base into the sea. The Giant's Causeway was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1986. The columns were formed around 50 to 60 million years ago during a period of intense volcanic activity. Molten basalt lava flowed across the landscape and came into contact with the sea. As the lava cooled rapidly, it contracted and cracked in a process similar to how mud cracks when it dries, but at a massive scale and with extraordinary regularity. The consistent hexagonal shape is a result of the even cooling of the lava and the natural physics of how contracting rock fractures under uniform stress. Local legend tells a different story. According to Irish mythology, the causeway was built by the giant Fionn mac Cumhaill, anglicized as Finn McCool, who constructed it as a path to Scotland so he could fight a rival giant across the sea. A near-identical basalt formation called Fingal's Cave exists on the Scottish island of Staffa, lending the legend a strange geographical credibility. Today, the causeway draws around 600,000 visitors per year, and despite its fame, walking out across the columns into the crashing North Atlantic surf remains one of the most genuinely strange experiences in Europe. 4. Darvaza Gas Crater, Turkmenistan. In the middle of the Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan, there is a crater roughly 230 feet wide and 98 feet deep that has been on fire continuously since 1971. It burns day and night, 365 days a year, visible from miles away in the darkness of the surrounding desert. Locals call it the door to hell. The name is not an exaggeration. The crater was formed in 1971 when a Soviet drilling operation collapsed into an underground pocket of natural gas. Fearing the spread of toxic methane to nearby villages, geologists set the gas alight, expecting it to burn itself out within a few weeks. They severely underestimated what lay beneath. Turkmenistan holds some of the largest natural gas reserves in the world, and the crater has been feeding on that supply ever since for over 50 years without interruption. Multiple attempts have been made to extinguish it, none successfully. As recently as 2022, scientists reported that the fires were beginning to diminish slightly, but the crater continues to burn. In 2013, explorer George Kourounis became the first person to descend into the crater, rappelling down into the fire wearing a specially designed heat-resistant suit. At the bottom, surrounded by flames on all sides, he collected soil samples that were later found to contain bacteria, living organisms thriving inside an active fire crater. The Darvaza gas crater is a popular destination for those who make the difficult overland journey through the desert to reach it, and camping on its rim has become a well-known bucket list experience for extreme travelers. Standing at the edge of a 230-foot hole filled with fire in the middle of one of the world's most remote deserts is about as close as most people will ever get to another world. 3. Catatumbo Lightning, Venezuela. Over Lake Maracaibo in northwestern Venezuela, lightning strikes almost every night of the year. This is not an occasional storm or a seasonal weather pattern. It is one of the most consistent and intense electrical phenomena on the planet. Known as the Catatumbo lightning, the storms produce an average of 28 lightning bolts per minute at their peak, and the phenomenon occurs for an average of 140 to 160 nights per year, with some estimates placing it as high as 280 nights annually. It has been visible to sailors navigating the Caribbean coast for centuries and was once used as a navigational reference point. The lightning is generated by a unique combination of atmospheric conditions. Warm, moisture-laden air from the Caribbean flows inland and collides with cold air descending from the surrounding Andes Mountains. The Catatumbo River Valley acts as a natural funnel that concentrates this collision directly over Lake Maracaibo. The result is a nearly permanent electrical storm that forms most reliably between dusk and midnight. The lightning strikes reach heights of up to 5 kilometers and produce no thunder audible from the lake's surface due to the altitude at which they occur, creating a silent light show that can be seen from up to 400 kilometers away. Lake Maracaibo is one of the oldest lakes on Earth, estimated to be between 20 and 36 million years old. The region beneath it holds one of the largest oil reserves in South America, and the area has a long history of human settlement dating back thousands of years. Tourists who travel to the lake to witness the Catatumbo lightning typically board small boats and anchor in the middle of the water after dark. On a clear night, the storm produces a continuous flickering light that illuminates the horizon, a natural electrical storm that has been running almost without pause for as long as human records exist. 2. White Desert, Egypt. About 370 miles southwest of Cairo, in the middle of the Sahara, the landscape transforms into something that looks like it belongs on the surface of the moon. The White Desert, known in Arabic as Sahara El Beida, is a protected national park in Egypt's Farafra region, covering roughly 115 square miles of flat desert floor, studded with towering chalk rock formations in brilliant white. These formations rise from the sand in shapes that wind erosion has sculpted over thousands of years into forms that resemble mushrooms, icebergs, and animals, some standing over 30 feet tall. The white rock is composed of chalk and limestone deposited when this part of the Sahara was covered by a shallow sea during the Cretaceous period, roughly 80 million years ago. As the sea retreated, the sediment hardened into rock. Prevailing desert winds then went to work, eroding the softer material and leaving the harder chalk formations standing. The process is ongoing. The shapes visible today are still being slowly carved and reshaped by the same winds. Fossilized marine life, including ancient sea urchins and shells, can still be found embedded in the rock throughout the area. The White Desert is most dramatic at sunrise and sunset, when the low angle of the light turns the white chalk formations pink, orange, and gold. At night, with no light pollution for hundreds of miles, the sky above the desert is among the darkest and most star-filled in the world, and the white formations glow faintly in the moonlight. The area is accessible by vehicle from the nearby oasis town of Farafra, and overnight, camping among the formations is permitted. It is one of the most visually striking and least visited natural wonders in North Africa and the world. 1. Rishat Structure, Eye of the Sahara, Mauritania. In the middle of the Sahara Desert in west-central Mauritania, the ground forms a perfect set of concentric rings stretching 25 miles across, so vast and so geometrically precise that it was not fully understood until humans began viewing the Earth from space. NASA astronauts on early Gemini missions in the 1960s used it as a navigational landmark. From the ground, you can walk across it without realizing what it is. From orbit, it looks like a giant eye staring back at the sky. This is the Rishat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara. The formation was initially believed to be the site of a meteor impact. Its circular shape and enormous scale seemed to match impact craters found elsewhere in the solar system. But extensive geological study found no evidence of an impact, no shocked quartz, no melted rock, no debris field. The current scientific explanation is that the Rishat structure is an eroded geological dome formed when volcanic activity pushed rock layers upward from below. Over hundreds of millions of years, erosion wore down the top of the dome at different rates for different rock types, exposing the circular bands of layered rock visible today. The structure is estimated to be approximately 100 million years old, formed during the same period that Africa and South America were splitting apart. Some researchers have pointed to the Rishat structure as a candidate for the lost city of Atlantis, citing its circular layout and its alignment with descriptions written by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. The scientific community does not support this theory, but the sheer geometry of the structure, a near-perfect series of rings in the middle of the world's largest desert, continues to fuel speculation. It has been formally recognized by the International Union of Geological Sciences as one of the top 100 geological heritage sites on Earth. There is no other feature like it anywhere on the planet. Some of these places are shrinking. Some are still being shaped. The Darvaza crater may finally be burning out, and the crystal caves of Nika will flood the moment the pumps stop. Nothing on this list will look the same forever. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more beyond belief facts, click on the video appearing on your screen now and remember to hit the subscribe button.